back to the program. Tony Davoren, as you know, talks a lot about irrigation because he's an expert in that field, but he's also very good at making sure that the irrigation machines are kept very honest.
Oh, just another one of the services we offer, Rob. Part of the whole irrigation scene is to make sure that the irrigators that are on the properties irrigating are actually doing what they're supposed to be doing. Particularly the modern machines like we've got here, this big long linear. It has some very tight design specifications, and we'll be checking machines to make sure that what the farmer bought is what he's got. So he bought a machine that would operate at a certain pressure and put on a certain amount of water in a certain amount of time, and we're checking to make sure that that is in fact the case.
So you're able to fix it if it's not?
Yeah, once we get the evaluation done and we take all that data back and run it in through some software that we have that's been developed for this sort of work, we can identify whether we have good uniformity, low pressures, low flows, and then identify what has to be fixed to actually get the system up to scratch.
It's not rocket science when you're using buckets, Tony.
No, it's not rocket science when you're using buckets. In fact, everything out there is relatively simple, you know, from our pressure gauge that we use. The beauty about the buckets is that we have a large orifice, so we're catching a good surface area under the irrigator. I mean, ideally it would be nice to be able to catch the water in consecutive buckets as we go down, but that would mean we'd have a few thousand of them out there rather than a few hundred out there, and that would just be too time consuming for the farmer. So there's some protocols. A machine this long, we must have at least 80 buckets out there, no further than 5 metres apart, to make sure that we catch a random spread of the sprinklers, because the sprinklers are not perfect. I mean, the sprinkler's not perfect. Irrigation is not a perfect science. I mean, there's manufacturing defects, and can't get away from them. Just got a little bit of wind now, but it's still okay to evaluate a machine like this. So we're always going to have some imperfections in terms of the way water's actually applied. So we're looking for that uniformity to be as close as we can get to one.
Now, you noticed that neither I nor the cameraman came in with you when you got wet. What were you doing up on the ladder?
When I was up on the ladder, I was checking the pressure before the pressure regulator and checking the pressure after the regulator in the sprinkler. This sprinkler, and that's what's fitted to this machine, needs 103 kilopascals to run at its optimum. And we need a similar amount of pressure before the pressure regulator so that it does its job and delivers only 103 kilopascals to that sprinkler. So what we're doing there, and because we did it at the very first drop on this machine, that's close enough for us to make sure that the inlet pressure to this irrigator is correct, is according to the design. If it's not high enough, then by the time we get to the very end of this machine, there will be not enough pressure to run these sprinklers. And if there's too much pressure, then he's spending more money on electricity than he needs to run this irrigator.
Now, the white stakes, I assume, is speed.
You're spot on. When we finish this evaluation, we're looking for the reasons why the depth this particular farmer thinks he's putting on might not be what he's putting on. So if it's running faster than it should be, or it's running slower than it should be, then that affects what depth is going on. So we can identify the reason why he's not putting on as much water, one of the reasons why he's not putting on as much water as he thinks he is.
And that would tie in, no doubt, with the buckets, because there is a pass over the top of the bucket.
Yes, that's right. We pass over those buckets, and they do two things for us. They will catch. We can adjust the catches that we get in there to work out what the mean application depth is. We can calculate what the flow rate is that's coming from the irrigator into the buckets, and we can also calculate the rate at which the water arrives at the soil. So those buckets, while they might be a simple $1.95 bucket from the warehouse or Kmart or somewhere, they serve a very, very valuable part of this evaluation. Tony,
what do you do with the information? Obviously you need to fine-tune it if it's not working.
Absolutely. We take this data back to the office. We run it through a series of some software, and the key graph is we get one of these things back. And what we're looking for is not this. We're looking for this to be a very small scatter of data, and this would be a very poor example. It will have a very low distribution uniformity, probably around about, from memory, about 0.72. which is very poor for a centre pivot. It should be up in the close to 0.9. Whereas this is what we are looking for. We're looking for a very tight scatter of the amount of water that's put on under this irrigator, and if you look at that, it varies from about 1.7 millimetres to about 3.1 millimetres. That's exceptionally good. It's probably about as good as it's going to get in real field conditions. If we were in a perfect wind tunnel somewhere, then we can do better than that, but out in the field we're not going to do any better than that, so that's exceptionally good.
So for
Very happy.
So for your bad one, a technician of some sort comes out and fixes it?
Yes, that report goes back to the farmer, or it goes back to the irrigation company, and there will be recommendations in there what has to be fixed to get that machine running at its optimum.
How often do you need to do these tests?
We do a lot of evaluations soon after the irrigator is installed, before the farmer makes a final payment.
That's a wise thing.
It is a wise thing, and that will identify if there are, if it's either some poor installation or the original design wasn't up to scratch, and it will identify the things that have to be fixed before that farmer will pay his final payment. And periodically we will do valuations on these sorts of machines of the order of every 5 years. It's like getting a warrant of fitness for your car. You want to make sure you haven't got any defects that are going to mess up the operation of the machine.